But a lot of people put posters up around the Rosetta area, you know, a week before their gig, and the week, like a few days after the gig the previous week had taken place. And no one's gonna go, past the Rosetta and go, oh, it's they're gonna see the poster in the city centre. They're gonna see it on, beside, if you find a place by the city hall or at the edge of the motorway, or and all this had to be carefully thought out, because you were only able to buy, like 100 posters or something, so you had to put them up carefully, especially if people were coming behind you and putting theirs up over the top of them. But if that didn't happen and everything was good, then it did attract people to your gigs, and it was the only way. As I say, there was no way of sending out a group message, or promoters and bands these days that don't know how good they've got it, compared to what we had to do, back in the days, to actually promote a gig and to try and get people to come along. And do you know the best about it? And this is seriously straight up, and maybe it's because there might be just too many bands or whatever, but back in 1985, I think it was, and Stevie Shanks, I was in a shanty, and Stevie Shanks, the drummer, was closely associated with like a biker organisation, and they said, can you put on a gig in the Rosetta, just a one-off, like a biker thing. So word got out that this was going to take place, so we as a shanty played this gig, and there was about 200 people at it, and we were, oh wow. Well, the owner, obviously, Jim Allen, and his daughter Yvonne saw this, and then they came to Steve and said, can you make this a bit more regular? I mean, the Rosetta was in East Belfast, it wasn't it was just off the Armour Road though, so it was accessible, it was a nice venue, and just basically everybody just knew to go to it, sort of thing. But as I say, you still needed to get out there and advertise it, put up posters. There was just no way of getting people to your gig that didn't know you were going to be playing, unless it was through word of mouth, or you got out there with a bucket of paste and a brush and all this paper being slapped up all around Belfast to let everyone know that you were playing. Well, the thing is that, and this is the point I'm making, I'm long-winded as usual, but back then, without social media, without promoters even, and without, every Saturday night in the Rosetta was packed out. So it actually became like a competition between bands. So Stevie Shanks will remember this, and Remy Holler, and all the boys that were involved in the band scene back then, Eddie Curry. It was, when did the doors close and they didn't allow any more people in? The quicker that could happen, then you knew your band had outdid the band before, or we're going to do the band after. And seriously, I mean, in the early days of the Rosetta, there was a queue, around the Rosetta Road, and only like 200 people could get in, and then the doors closed, and then maybe 60 or 70 people were turned away, and they ended up going down downstairs and just having a drink, sort of thing. But I always remember, as I say, maybe if I was in Emerald and Ashanti were playing, I would go along, and Stevie would come out and say they were meant to maybe be on at 8 o'clock, and the doors were closed at 7:30. Nobody else was allowed to get in, and he would go 7:30, Harv, and then we were maybe playing the following week if I was in Emerald, and maybe the doors would be closed at 7:25, 5 minutes earlier, because they like slightly more people there at that time wanting to get in. But it was competitive and it was great. But seriously, and Andy Allen went on to become like the main man of the Rosetta. He just followed in his dad's footsteps and basically took the business on. And the Rosetta is was, I would like to say, is, I wish it was still going to this day, but it was the place. Everybody just wanted to play the Rosetta, and I was fortunate enough to be playing there. Lots, lots and lots and lots. But the point I'm making, again, as I say, long-winded, is that before social media, we got audiences into venues, lots of them. Every Saturday night was packed out, and fast forward 30 years later, or 35 years later, and even with social media and whatever, venues are struggling to get 40 or 50 people into a gig. A bigger band is obviously going to attract a bigger audience, but on a local level, you ask modern promoters like James Loveday and Kieran, and others like them, how hard do you have to work to actually get a decent audience for local bands. And most of the time they'll say, well, we don't really deal with local bands. Now James, in fairness to him, he does promote local bands brilliantly, but it's still hit or miss, and there's still the benefit of having social media and stuff to promote the gigs. We didn't have that back then. It was just who's playing this weekend? I'm not sure. Drive through the town, a wee poster up, down by Shaftesbury Square, Emerald, Annex, Winter's Rain. It didn't matter. You got your information from the posters, and you only got your information because a band had went to the trouble of going to first of all, actually getting a design done. Because, if you went to a shop, you couldn't actually just go in and say, hello, we're playing in the Rosetta next week, could you have 100 posters? Could I have 100 posters, please? You had to give them a poster, so you had to have a designer of the poster. My favourite posters of all time were Testament posters that Jim Carlin used to do, and because he always added something funny into them. There was always a musket head or a Harry hammer, and they were great days, and yeah. So Spuds, I'm not veering off track here because I was talking about the posters and doing the gigs and stuff. But if you wanted to play in Spuds, you still had to put up posters. But then you had to go away up to the Port Stewart, Coleraine, because that was their catchment area. And you still had to put posters up round by Coleraine, Port Rush, Port Stewart. And it was like, but I used to bring my fishing rod, and Robert and Dean and Alan drummer, I would tell you, when we got to Port Stewart and we had put up some posters, I would always say, right, now I need 30 minutes here, and I would go down to the harbour and cut up pieces of mackerel, that I'd got in Tesco or something, and hook that on and have a wee bit of fishing, just while I was there, because it was just it was so peaceful, and the boys couldn't, they didn't relate to it in any way, so they would just sit in the car and just have a bit of a laugh or whatever with each other. But I had to fish,